What's up, everyone? This is a continuation in a series in which we break down the candidates for the Knicks head coaching position. The last video, we broke down the pros and the cons of Mike Miller, and today we're going to break down the pros and the cons of Kenny Atkinson. Before we get started, if you like videos like this, please subscribe and like the video, as your support is much appreciated. Atkinson ironically started his career as an assistant coach for the Knicks in 2008 under Mike D'Antoni. 4 years later, he joined the Hawks coaching staff under Budenholzer, and in 2016, Kenny Atkinson finally got his first head coaching job on the Brooklyn Nets, where he played a huge role in turning one of the most hopeless situations in the league back in 2016 into a legit playoff team over the past 2 seasons. Kenny Atkinson is a candidate for the Knicks head coaching job, and it's even been reported that he has some strong internal support within the Knicks front office. The pros of hiring Kenny is that he has a very strong history of player development. He helped to rebuild the Nets in a very short 3 years, and his system embraces modern basketball on both ends of the court. The cons of hiring Kenny is that he doesn't mesh well with star players. He's got very little experience on a title contender, and he's notorious for having poor end-of-game play calling. Perhaps the best selling point of hiring Kenny Atkinson is that he has an extremely strong record when it comes to player development. When Kenny got the job, he inherited a trash roster with mostly young players. That team only won 20 games back in 2016 to the 2017 season. But he turned a lot of the players from that same 20-win season from awful players into legit studs. Guys like Joe Harris, Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, all were on that roster and became very good players under Kenny. As the Nets drafted and acquired more players like Jared Allen and D'Angelo Russell, Kenny was able to help those guys go from being just raw talents with high potential to quality NBA players. Each of those guys all worked hard, but Kenny's guidance played a huge role in their individual success. Joe Harris, for example, was a second-round pick of the Cleveland Cavaliers back in 2014. Joe Harris was an excellent shooter in his 4 years in Virginia, but the reason he fell to the 33rd pick was because scouts viewed him as a below-average athlete. They believed that his lack of athleticism would cause him to be a liability on defense, and that he wouldn't be able to do much on offense outside of shooting. On the Cavaliers, Joe Harris barely got any playing time behind all the veterans on the roster, and he even spent some time in the G League. In his second year, Harris suffered a foot injury that caused him to miss a lot of games, and in 2016, Harris was traded to the Orlando Magic and they immediately waived him. But the Nets saw something in Harris that the Magic clearly didn't, and they scooped him up after he cleared waivers, and that move was a huge success for them. After a few years of developing under Kenny Atkinson, Harris has turned himself into one of the better role players in the NBA. In fact, last year, Joe Harris averaged 14 points per game, while leading the league in three-point percentage at an unreal 47%. And while Joe Harris certainly worked hard to get to where he is now, he can't take all the credit, as Kenny played a huge role in his development. In fact, it was reported last year that Kenny showed Joe Harris clips of Kyle Korver so he could model his game after him. The perfect player for Harris to emulate, as they're both great shooters. The fact that Kenny Atkinson was able to help turn a player that was once an afterthought into an incredible role player by instilling confidence in him and giving him guidance shows that he's excellent at player development. The next player success story that happened under Kenny that I want to talk about is D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell was the 3rd pick in the 2015 NBA draft, and he was selected by the LA Lakers. While D'Angelo did show some nice flashes in LA, he was fairly inconsistent, and frankly, he was getting a lot more attention for what he was doing off the court than what he was doing on it, as D'Angelo Russell received a lot of negative headlines for snitching on Nick Young. After the Lakers drafted Lonzo Ball, D'Angelo Russell was viewed as expendable, so they packaged him in a trade to the Nets to get themselves out of Timothy Mozgov's contract. This move became a major win for the Nets, as D'Angelo Russell went from being just a throw-in in the trade to becoming a legit all-star. While D'Angelo Russell definitely grinded to make himself better, Kenny Atkinson played a huge role in D'Angelo making that all-star leap. D'Angelo Russell has even humbly given Kenny Atkinson credit for helping him grow, stating, "Honestly, I give him a lot of credit for the teaching moments. I feel like my knowledge and IQ has rose to another level just from learning from my mistakes and him breaking it down or us dissecting film together. I give him a lot of credit for the knowledge he's given us." If I wanted to, I could dedicate the entire video to breaking down all of Kenny's player growth success stories, but you get the point. He has an extremely strong record when it comes to helping players develop their games and become good players. If you're the Knicks, that type of coaching is what you should be looking for. Between guys like RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, and Frank Ntilikina, the Knicks have a lot of young players with untapped potential. They need a head coach that will give them guidance and will help them grow. I don't think there's a coach on the market with a better track record of player development. The next major pro of Kenny Atkinson is that he helped to rebuild the Nets extremely quickly. The current success of the Brooklyn Nets can make fans forget just how truly hopeless the Nets were a few years ago. It was only 3 years ago that the Nets were a complete dumpster fire because they had a team that was not only extremely awful, but possessed 0 first-round picks to rebuild their team. With Kenny as the head coach, it only took the Nets 3 seasons to go from being the laughingstock of the NBA to being relevant again. There are plenty of teams, such as the Suns and the Timberwolves, that have owned all their first-round picks for the past 10 years, yet they can't even make the playoffs. Under Kenny's leadership, the Nets turned plenty of rejects into legit players that helped the Nets make the playoffs back in 2019. Of course, the Nets front office deserves most of the credit for making savvy moves, but Kenny also played a huge role. In 2019, the Nets make the playoffs without any star talent outside of D'Angelo Russell, and this season, despite the Nets losing their 2 most important players to injury, they still managed to hold on to the 7th seed in the East. The excellent job that Kenny did in Brooklyn shows that he would be a good selection for the Knicks as head coach, and this brings us to the final point. The last main strength of Kenny Atkinson is that unlike many other coaches, Kenny fully embraces modern basketball on both ends of the floor. On the offensive end, the Nets under Atkinson have tried to attempt as many three-pointers as possible. In fact, in the past 2 seasons, the Nets have ranked number 5 in the league in three-point attempts a game. Attempting a lot of three-pointers is extremely important in modern basketball because according to the analytics, the 3-ball is one of the most efficient shots in basketball, along with shots right at the rim. Under Kenny, the Nets run a ton of pick and roll, and they move the ball around a lot to find the best shot. On defense, they are also analytically sound as they try to force their opponents to take the same shots that they try to avoid, the mid-range shot. They try to prevent three-pointers and shots in the paint, and as a result, the Nets have been an above-average defense the past 2 seasons. They ranked 8th in defensive efficiency this year, and last year, the Nets ranked 13th in defensive efficiency. Now, many old-school fans may not find value in the focus on modern basketball, but this is actually a very good sign. There's a reason why a team like the Houston Rockets have been very analytical based the past 5 years, and have also been one of the better teams in the league as well. Playing the game in the most efficient way is winning basketball. If the Knicks want to be relevant again, getting a coach that knows how to play to win in 2020 is a great start. At this point, we're going to talk about the main cons of hiring Kenny Atkinson, and the main flaw with Kenny is that he doesn't mesh well with stars. This con is evidenced by Kenny's firing from the Brooklyn Nets. Now, Kenny's firing clearly has nothing to do with the Nets' record. The Nets were a 7th seed in the East, despite their 2 best players being out with injuries. This firing had everything to do with the infighting between Kenny and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, as it was reported shortly after the firing that Kyrie Irving had soured on Kenny Atkinson and preferred Tyronn Lue as the next head coach. While Kenny Atkinson is good at working with young players, handling stars is a completely different challenge. While there isn't too many details about what specifically caused Atkinson and Kyrie to butt heads, Kenny's relationship with the stars on his team clearly faltered. The Knicks definitely need a coach that's good at development, but if and when the Knicks do acquire stars down the line, Kenny may not be able to handle the egos that comes with the all-stars in the NBA. The next major con of Kenny Atkinson that I want to bring up is his end of game play calling. Now, while we did discuss that Kenny is really good at his schemes on both ends of the floor, his decision making, especially at the end of games, are questionable at best. His play calling in tight games in fourth quarters tend to lack creativity, as it usually just boils down to pick and rolls and handoffs. Kenny also tends to have a bad habit of taking players out of the game when they're scorching hot. Kenny's struggles in the fourth quarter are evidenced by the fact that the Nets scored the second least amount of points in the fourth quarter, right behind the Hornets despite being a 7th seed. Even D'Angelo Russell recently took a shot at Kenny's fourth quarter decision making, stating, "I'm not going to give it to Kenny. I still don't think he knew what he had, honestly. I don't think he knew what I was capable of in the fourth quarter." Now, to put that quote into context, D'Angelo Russell made that statement because Kenny Atkinson would sometimes leave him on the bench during fourth quarters. Now, I do believe that Kenny is a good coach, but it does appear that Kenny does make mistakes in the fourth quarter. Kenny's late game play calling really puts into question if he's really a championship coach or if he's just a coach that can develop and get you to the playoffs, but eventually needs to be replaced. And this brings us to the last con, and that's his lack of experience on winning teams. Now, while I do believe Kenny is good, again, the ceiling of a team coached by Kenny is definitely in question, considering that the most wins Kenny has ever gotten on a team is 42 wins. Kenny has never coached a great regular season team or has even taken a team deep into the playoffs. Kenny was great for Brooklyn in his first 4 years, but his lack of strategy down the stretch of games leaves a lot to be desired. Ultimately, though, I do believe Kenny Atkinson would be a good hire for the New York Knicks. The main reason for this is because the fit would just be perfect. The Knicks roster is similar to what the Nets were a few years ago in that it is mostly young guys with untapped potential. Kenny can do wonders in helping the Knicks young guys to fulfill their potential. Now, he may not be a championship level coach, but he would help the Knicks rebuild. What do you guys think though? Should the Knicks hire Kenny Atkinson or should they go in a different direction? Let me know in the comment section. Also, if you missed my last 2 videos on Tibbs and Mike Miller, check out my playlist on the Knicks coaching search. Over the next week, I'm going to analyze the other 8 candidates and you're not going to want to miss it. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.